everyone, and welcome back to another Half Pint session. So today is something a little different. I was told about a teacher that was doing something rather interesting related to the Inklings with her students. So Christie, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
Would you mind just introducing yourself and telling us about this project that your students have had?
Sure. So, in one of my classes, it's the Inklings Project in Strategic Writing at Belmont University. I have 10 students. They are undergraduates, public relations and social media management majors and minors. And we've been working with the Inklings all semester. Their charge was to take one of 3 Inklings authors and become a brand ambassador for them. So basically, to introduce their author to today's Gen Z audience. So our 3 authors are C.S. Lewis, J.R.R. Tolkien, and Dorothy Sayers.
Mm-hmm. And is this an annual thing, or was this the first time the project began?
This is completely experimental, first time. It's been a wild ride. Learned lots of things, had lots of fun. Hopefully, we can do it again, but it's definitely a first time through.
I think you should reach out to the literary estates of these authors and say, hey, listen, we're doing some branding for you, some advertising. I think we should probably get paid.
Definitely.
Wonderful. And what are you hoping that your students are going to be getting out of this?
So one of the key things was just for the students and I to really get a deeper knowledge of these Inklings authors. So for many of my students, this was a first-time introduction to these authors. So we really took some time to read their works and to understand the deeper truths that are woven through their works. And then I'm hoping that we can then take that and share it with others. Just spread it so that audiences, Gen Z especially, are not always as familiar with the Inklings authors, but and unless they've seen the movies, right? That's usually where they've had their introduction. And so just really invite them into a deeper understanding of who these authors are, what it is that they have to say, and why that's still so resonant today.
Mm-hmm. And so that's on the Inkling side of things. But then what about on the social media management sort of side of things? What are they meant to be learning from this?
So we do best, our best learning is by doing. And so we learn to create good content that engages our audience. And so that's what I'm hoping that they take from this. How do we take authors that really are not well known today in our circles anyway, and how do we introduce them to an audience and get that audience to engage in that content and become lifelong readers of the Inkling? So very public relations, social media management focused in just creating good content that engages others.
Wonderful. Well, I'll bring you back in at the end, but let's speak to some of the students.
All right. I'm going to hand you over to Riley Green. She was with the C.S. Lewis group.
Excellent.
Hello.
Hello, Riley. I'm David. Pleased to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
So you were working on C.S. Lewis.
Yes, sir, I was.
Tell me a little bit about that experience. What were the sorts of things that you did? What did you find out you didn't know before? What did you learn from the whole experience?
I think, so out of the 3 of our authors, C.S. Lewis is definitely the most well-known by people. So I think the biggest learning curve for me, and I'm someone who I think is a little more familiar with his work than a lot of other people, so my biggest learning curve was trying to remember that I'm in the minority and I need to sort of take myself to my audience, and work with establishing the big thing that we talked about in this class was like wonder to wisdom. So reminding students, reminding people that there is still a wonder and a joy of what these authors were talking about, and wisdom along with that, stuff that maybe we didn't read when we were growing up, stuff we didn't see movies about when we were growing up. They have so much more to them. So really, the biggest thing that I learned was how to be aware of the entire process. And how we did that was we used a lot of social media. I was in a group of 4, and so we had a social media campaign that really focused on starting with these fun, more lighthearted videos and then transitioning into deeper, more character analyses, ways to engage people, as well as we had an event, basically a convocation type event at our school, to really focus on some of the themes that we see in Narnia and why they're so important today. This is the 75th anniversary of the publishing of The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, so we had a birthday party for it. And in our little birthday party, we had cupcakes, we had decorations, we had a big to-do about it, but we also
Turkish
talked about...
delight?
Oh, I wish. We do not have access to good Turkish delight in Nashville, Tennessee, unfortunately.
That's okay. You don't want your students betraying their siblings.
I know. So I've heard. It's not 10 out of 10, unfortunately.
It depends. I rather like Turkish delight, but I do know some sourpusses that think it's revolting.
You're so brave for that. But we had a very American. We had cupcakes instead. But we also talked about some of the big themes in the book and why we, as people who may have read it when we were 6 or 8 or 10, should also be reading it when we are 18, 20, 22, and why we should still be talking about others, why it was so important to us growing up. And so I think working on that whole range of there is wonder and there is wisdom, and they can work so beautifully together, was something that we tried to remind people with Lewis, because they already have an inkling, if you will, an inkling of knowledge about him.
Yeah, I grew up reading Narnia, and I've got a 3-year-old going on 4, and I just read him The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe over Holy Week.
Oh, wonderful.
So on Easter Sunday, we read about Aslan's resurrection.
That's beautiful.
He just really liked the pictures. If you look very carefully... Okay. If you look very carefully in the battle scene, there's a dragon that is fighting a squirrel.
Oh, fantastic. Thank you so much, C.S. Lewis.
He thought, well, you can thank Pauline Baines for that one specifically, but yeah, Alexander thought that was really cool.
That is really cool. He has great taste.
Excellent. So, sort of a final question in terms of how would you say this has changed you in terms of your understanding of C.S. Lewis, how you might think about him or other authors like him after having gone through this process of trying to introduce him to people that either don't know him and people that are aware of him to go a little bit deeper?
I think this has changed me because you sort of think of Lewis, or at least I did, think of Lewis in 2 buckets. He was Narnia, he was fantasy, quote-unquote children's lit, and he was Mere Christianity, The Problem of Pain and Grief Observed, these very intellectual works that are very, very thinky and very... he has so many thoughts about so many things, and I love him so much for that. But that's such a different bucket that people sort of put him in. And I think for me, what this got to remind me is that there is a lot of beautiful emotion in those kind of thinky books, and there's a lot of deep knowledge in these children's books that we talk about, and that is what people want. They want to see the depth. They want to have different parts to talk about. If there's someone that enjoys action and battle and emotion, then they can find that in both. And if there's someone who enjoys thinking and intellectualizing and apologetics, things like that, then they can find that in both. And so recognizing that, and for me seeing that, remembering that these are 2 things that combine everywhere, he is not just 2 separate buckets, was a really important learning process for me. I think that was my biggest takeaway.
I am horrified that you learnt this so much earlier than I did. So his friend Owen Barfield, he said basically what Lewis thought about anything was present everywhere that he wrote. And Barfield also spoke about there being several different C.S. Lewises. And you bifurcated them into 2, but you could add many more subdivisions within them. But it was when I read Lewis's essays, and he spoke about, he does this in some of his major works as well, but he said that the mind is the organ of truth, but the imagination is the organ of meaning. And about how he always spoke to both, as you say, in his thinky books and also in his fiction. And this season on the show, we've actually just finished Perelandra. And that is a really beautiful example of both of those being pushed very hard. Because in Perelandra, you are dealing with very heady concepts about the fall and free will and grace. But all of this is set in the space of a fictional world so that your imagination is engaged. And so you can think through these difficult and deep issues, but within a fantasy context. So it's also fun.
Yes, exactly. I love that. I've done other work in other classes before talking about that exact thing, that fiction gives you the opportunity to see your world where you are taken out of it a little bit. So it gives you the space to process things. And I think, especially with Lewis, who is willing to come on so many different levels, that's something that is one of his biggest skills.
Yeah, he said so many things that I really want to dig in with you now. But in particular, in an experiment in criticism, he says that my own eyes aren't enough for me. I must see through the eyes of others. And that's what his books always give us, one way or the other.
Exactly.
Well, thanks so much. That was a wonderful summary. Thank you for all
Thank
your work.
you. Thank you for having us.
You're very welcome.
We're coming with Adriana. She's from Dorothy Sayers,
Wonderful.
our secret third inkling.
Hi.
Hi. I think it's wonderful that you guys also did Dorothy Sayers, because she's, while not strictly an inkling, she's inkling adjacent. She was a regular correspondent with C.S. Lewis and clearly influenced his thought, and vice versa. She was a big friend of Charles Williams, one of the other inklings, and he really set her onto Dante, and that's what a lot of her work was spent doing. So I'm really pleased that you guys actually got a little bit out of the inklings bubble and got to do a woman as well, because...
Yeah. That was a really cool thing to do, and that was another main focus of at least my group. We really wanted to emphasize her as a writer instead of just being the woman that was like on the side who helped, because we were like, to have that staple, like just like, oh, like she was cool because she was a woman. And I was like, no, she did it, she was cool, and her work was phenomenal.
Mm-hmm. Had you read much of Dorothy Sayers before you started this project?
I had no clue who Dorothy was before this project, but I quickly was like, I gotta know everything, because at first we kind of learned about everybody's authors. So we did our own book club where it's like we read Leaf by Nagel.
Mm-hmm.
We actually listened to the BBC radio of the Screwtape Letters,
Mm-hmm.
and then
the
we
one
listened.
with John Cleese? Is that the one?
I want to say yes.
Okay.
And then we listened to Man Born to Be King, which was really cool. And then we were able to go ahead and pick our authors. So we submitted an email to Dr. K being like, this is our top choice, this is our second, third. And so then from that we got broken into our groups. And I picked Dorothy because I was like, I really liked the mystery aspect. And I didn't know who she was, and I thought that it would be cool to learn about a completely different author and truly push myself to the limit to see how far I would be able to go.
Mm-hmm. No, I would actually say I think you personally made the right choice. And I say this as a Lewis fan, number one, but it took me a long time to really discover Dorothy L. Sayers in just her existence and her relationship with the Inklings. But then when I started reading her works, for example, you mentioned The Man Born to Be King, which Lewis read every Holy Week as part of his devotion.
Yeah.
He reads far quicker than I do, so I just do it for the entirety of Lent. I usually get there in the end.
Oh, that's so cool that you did it for Lent. I
and
love that.
And there is actually an audio play version of it that you can follow along. It's a little bit more abridged, but yeah. So I sort of adopted that as well. But then I got into her mysteries, and she really does shine there.
What did you read?
Whose Body was the first one.
Oh, wow. We read The Nine Tailors.
Mm-hmm.
So, have you read that one or no?
No, but my wife has, so I know the storyline to it.
Oh, it's great. It's great. Once you get past the first 3 chapters that are all about bells, which everyone laughs about because I was traumatized by the bells, I decided I was going to read all of it in 3 days on spring break in a plane.
Okay.
So the first 3 chapters were bells, and I just remember turning to my brother and being like, why are there bells? No more bells. And everyone's you don't hear it, but they're all laughing because they know how much I hate the bells.
It is something about authors of that era that they very often do start their books with, I'm just going to focus on this thing and talk about it for a little while.
And I don't understand why.
Tolkien does the same thing at the beginning of The Lord of the Rings. It's like...
There's walking.
Yep. Yeah, at the beginning of The Lord of the Rings, Tolkien's like, well, I could begin with a bang, but I'm going to talk about the history of hobbits and pipeweed and a whole load of other... I remember starting this because a lot of people around me loved Lord of the Rings, and this is like, I'm going to keep going, but I'm not seeing why this is fun. And she has a few speed bumps like that as well.
Yeah, I've never read Lord of the Rings. I as a child, I didn't read it because it was like really daunting and big. And I was like, no, I'm not going to do that. But yeah, I think it's cool now that I've like kind of seen into it. I would definitely I'm this summer probably going to read them. But I can totally understand how like older authors did that like random build up, but it's needed. Like you don't want to read it, but you need to read it.
I like that take. There are also some really good audio versions of Lord of the Rings if you do struggle.
Oh, cool.
Because it's a big book. Again, you guys are light years ahead of me. I only read Lord of the Rings for the first time 15 years ago, something like that.
If it makes you feel better, I've never read it. You're ahead of me.
But I'm much older, and I run a CS List podcast, so I should have got to this stuff sooner. But that's fine. Okay, so you did Man Born to Be King. Did you you read one of her mystery novels? Did you read any of her essays like Are Women Human?
No, actually, we didn't. We did her short stories. So we each read, I want to say it's the first 3 in the book, and they were really good and really cool. If you're like looking for just like a tidbit into her and to like kind of get into it, but like not really, the short stories are amazing. And they're fast, so it's not like you don't have that fluff. So it was like 1 second was happening and then you're in it.
Yeah.
So it was really good.
Yeah, it's the same thing with her essays. They're short and punchy and usually very funny.
Yeah.
I think she'd been a fun person to sit down next to on a bar stool and chat to for a while.
Yeah, like some of her quotes I remember for our Instagram, because I was really heavy on the Instagram I was looking for quotes, and she had said something like, I don't spend more than a weekend on like murder things, and I was like, Dorothy, you're the only person who would say something like this and like let people reuse it. But
I love it. And so what was your experience of this particular project with relation to Dorothy? What do you think you got out of it?
I think I got a lot of stuff out of this. It really, I got to like I said, push myself to like my limit. For our project, we went really heavy with social media. So we had to create a social media calendar and like be very strict with it. Like it had everything. It had time of posting, type of content being posted, the captions. It had it all. But it taught me time management and how to like effectively promote somebody to a group of people that wouldn't really know them. Like Riley had mentioned, we had all kind of done events based off our authors, and we got really lucky that for Sayre's event, we had about 30 people in attendance, which is wild. So it was like 30 people in a little room, and there was a line out the door to come in. So I took that as a huge win. Even though I was, at that point, stuck in a Dunkin' Donuts trying to get our donuts for the event. So people would it was like a scavenger hunt, so you can have like a coffee and a donut while you did it. But they got it after because people at Dunkin' Donuts were not doing too hot. But yeah, I got a lot out of it. Like it made me like really fall in love with public relations, and it helped me figure out that this is what I really want to do because I'm a minor. I'm a music business major. So I learned, I was like, this is my niche. I was like, I'm quite good at this. And then I asked my team members if I was good at it because I didn't want to be like, I'm good at this and then be bad. So then, yeah, I learned that I really loved it and like all the intricate things like a peso model and the whole 9 yards.
It is part of running a podcast that I do find exhausting because there's just so much to be done. It's like just producing content is just like, congratulations.
It's a lot.
That's the first step. You've now got to make sure that it gets out to people and people know the sorts of things that you're doing and speaking to groups and to sub-networks that might be interested in the things that you're producing. It's so much work.
It is a lot. Like whenever I think I'm like, we did social media for around 2 weeks because it was our implementation weeks. And I thought to myself after, I'm like, people do this like all the time. And that's a lot. That's a lot. To create a calendar for like months, it's a lot. But I think it's cool because I like the like tiny intricate things because I'm odd, but that's a different story.
That's okay. It's okay. The entire point about life is going into the world and just producing your brand of odd and finding the people that like it.
Yeah, like my mom always says, if you're not weird, you're boring. So
your mum's a wise woman. Before we go, have you read any of the letters between Dorothy Sayers and C.S. Lewis?
I have not read them, but I've heard of, like, we've talked about them. We talked about the one where C.S. Lewis was like, I don't think women belong in the church, and Dorothy was like,
She disagreed.
Yeah, we kind of touched on that one a bit, but
Okay.
we focused more on Sayers as an individual instead of like with Lewis.
Sure. Well, I'm gonna send each of you that are speaking to me a gift, and yours is going to be Dorothy and Jack, which is a collection of their correspondence.
I would love that. That's so kind of you.
You're very welcome. Thank you.
All right, thank you. I'll grab Jed. He's with Tolkien. He's cool.
How is it going?
Very well. Hey, Jed. How's it
Hey.
going?
So I assume when we were talking about walking, we were talking about Tolkien.
Usually, it's with him walking, leaves, what a tree looks like. It's
Exactly.
like that's about a chapter each.
It is, but I would say, as the Tolkien advocate, it's necessary. It's necessary evil. But yeah, once you get past the walking and the world building, there's obviously great things beyond that.
Absolutely. What was your experience with Tolkien prior to this project?
I had actually read all the Lord of the Rings and the Hobbit. Watched all the movies, obviously, and like I said, when I was younger, I had read all the books. So I would say I'd probably had more of a knowledge of Tolkien than most people did at that time, because a lot of people watch the movies, but the books are definitely challenging to get through.
How did you find that with regards to your audience? Did you find people generally knew more about Tolkien as a result?
People knew Tolkien, but were afraid to read his works,
Hmm.
and so it was a hard thing to sell that, just because there was so much walking and stuff like that, a lot of world building. But one of the things we kind of focused on really through this thing was the importance of subcreation in a world. So we had an event like the other groups did, and a professor came from Belmont and talked about how the importance. He's an architect professor, and he was talking about how important subcreation is, even in our own life. How we're in a world, but we all are supposed to subcreate and to make it our own.
And you guys also read Leaf by Niggle?
We did. Yeah, I was the first book we read for the semester, and yeah, it was really good. I had never read it before, and I really enjoyed it.
I'll actually go on record as saying I think it's my favorite of all of Tolkien's
Really?
works. Yeah.
It's like I said, once I got through it, it kind of left me thinking. I was like, what was this about? But then once I thought about it, it was really good.
Well, I mean, I think it has to be my favorite just because it's clearly miraculously given, because Tolkien wrote this in the space of about a day.
Right.
And the more and more I find out about the Lord of the Rings and the Silmarillion, it's like speed was not his strong suit.
No, that's not something he was phenomenal at.
So you had this event where somebody came and spoke. What are the other some things that you did?
Oh, well, like I said, we also hit social media really hard. We ran our Instagram, and starting the Instagram, we really focused on his works. So Lord of the Rings, Hobbit, Silmarillion, and Leaf by Niggle. Those were the 4 that we really focused on. And then, so once we introduced those, I was just kind of like a surface level. And then by the end of it, after our event, and towards the last couple of days of our implementation, we were really focusing on the characters and what they meant in a larger aspect outside of what they just meant in the movie. So like Gandalf as as the kind of the Jesus figure, talking about how his sacrifice and the resurrection, and then stuff like that, and all of his characters really do tie to some key aspect of Christianity. So that was really something we were focusing on towards the end, of just trying to get to the deeper aspects of his characters.
Who would you say is your favorite character out of
That's tough.
the Lord of the Rings, or wider?
Yeah, I would probably Aragorn in the Lord of the Rings. I think a lot of people would probably have that same answer, but he's just a very well-written character.
And he's also a little different in the movies.
Right, exactly.
In the movies, he's the reluctant hero. He doesn't want to take on his mantle as king, whereas in the book, he's just like, I'm the king.
Right, yeah.
I'm going to go there. We're going to do this.
Right.
And what would you say you learnt out of this whole experience?
I think kind of what they've all talked about, just the process. We couldn't have, what we were talking about by the end of our implementation, we couldn't have been talking about in the beginning, because people were just gotten turned off by it immediately. Like, what are you talking about? So trying to get them introduced to it, and that it goes for every PR and campaign outside of Tolkien and what we've been doing, but you gotta get the people in first before you can just hit them with all the wisdom.
Well, the nice thing about Tolkien's works is so much of it has been illustrated by
Sure.
wonderful authors.
Oh,
So
absolutely.
yeah, it's nice that you can lean on that, and also for better and for worse, at least the movies are in people's minds
Right.
in the zeitgeist, so people
Exactly.
have at least some conception of what's going on.
Right.
Because I first read The Lord of the Rings prior to the movies coming out. I knew they were coming out.
Right.
So it was me versus this big book. It was the release date was here,
Yep.
as big book, and I was trying to get through it as quickly as possible.
Yeah.
I failed, but that's okay.
That's all right.
Mm-hmm. And it's funny that you mentioned the Silmarillion. When I started reading that, I actually did something not too dissimilar to what you guys were doing. This is what I did: is I started producing graphics, trying to get all of the angelic beings straight in my head, because there are a lot of them.
Yeah, that's like people say, "Oh, the Lord of the Rings is hard to read." Yeah,
Silmarillion.
Yeah, Silmarillion is 1,000 times harder. 1,000 times harder.
But I'd actually even say even then, I think the Silmarillion probably has some of my favorite passages.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
Like the Ainul Inlay, I think might be my second favorite after Leaf by Niggle.
Absolutely, yeah. I wish more people would read it, but I mean, I understand that it's a daunting challenge.
You've got to want it. It's right. Kind of like the first time somebody sits down to read through the Bible,
right?
And they're chugging along through Genesis, and everything's great, and then Exodus, fine. Leviticus is like okay. You then get to Numbers, and it's like, what am I even reading?
Exactly. Yeah. You're on your There's the Silmarillion just has so many characters. A lot of Elvish. It's like I said, it's a daunting challenge.
Well, it was fun. Wonderful. Thanks, man.
Thank you.
If you put your teacher back on, and we'll wrap this thing up.
Hello, I'm back.
Hello. So, as we wrap up, what are your thoughts for other teachers that might want to do something similar or related to this?
Do it. Definitely do it. I think there's a lot of opportunity for disciplines that are not typically considered Inklings related. I think if we just begin to look at the world and what we do and how we approach it, we'll find that there's a connection to some aspect of an Inklings author. The students mentioned before an architect professor here at Belmont. I'm hoping he does it, because the idea of subcreation in Tolkien and how we use much of those same ideas in building anything, but especially in his field, I think that would be amazing. We also talked with a group of Inklings fellows. We were talking about just maybe approaching the Inklings through themes. So here I looked at authors, but I think there's a lot of opportunity to look at the Inklings thematically. So what did they say about faith, of course, but also what did they say about the environment? And so how do we look at these things more from a thematic perspective? And I think once we do that, that opens up the possibilities to all kinds of fields and disciplines.
Absolutely. I love the idea of an architect getting involved in this as well. I always want to see the blueprints to Caer Paravel and the Witch's House. And funnily enough, there's actually a lot over the street from where I live that the house burned down a couple of years ago, and it's been lying vacant. So it's like, I could build a castle there.
You could, definitely, definitely. We'll find the blueprints, and then we'll just get you started right away. We'll make it a service project for students. So there we go.
Free labor, even better. I love it. Well, this is wonderful. Thank you so much for coming on the show. Thank you for sharing the project that you've done with your students. And I hope this inspires another teacher somewhere to get a little creative with introducing the Inklings to their students.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for having us, for the opportunity to share. And if anyone is interested, I'd love to share my experience. I learned lots of things that kind of worked, and then some things that worked really well. So if you're interested, let me know. I'd love to chat.
Wonderful. And viewers, please join us again next time when we'll continue going further up, further in. Cheers.